Today's guests join us from the restaurant opening soon that you haven't heard anything about, but will undoubtedly be talked about, I'm sure, once the secret gets out or it opens, whichever one comes first. The Noortwyck is an elevated neighborhood restaurant focusing on delicious food and warm hospitality, set to open in New York's West Village this spring.
And it's been intentional that they're keeping it under wraps. So we're excited to get a little sneak peek behind the scenes. Helmed by a team of EMP alums, we have Chef Andy Quinn with us today.
Welcome.
And yes, welcome. And Cedric, who was the wine director at EMP for many years. And I'm sure we'll hear the story about how you guys came to get together on this. So we're excited to hear what you guys have been working on so cryptically that literally the only thing we could find when we were like, we always do like a little bit of background research and whatever before the shows. And the only thing we could find was your liquor license application for the community board.
Yeah.
That was it.
Well, yeah, thanks very much for having us on. I guess it is kind of semi-intentional, right? I mean, and there's also like, we'll go over this a lot, I'm sure, but this is the first time we've ever done this.
Yeah.
And, what is the right way to do it? And we don't want to just start shouting about us opening a restaurant because there's so many variables that we're not set. You've got to kind of be strategic about these things in the digital age, I think, with how information gets out. So.
No, I like it. Yeah. So it wasn't it was semi-strategic. We're not sure yet.
Yeah, I think so.
If it's successful, it was totally
Yeah,
strategic.
exactly,
If it's not successful, it was by accident. No, I think press is a funny thing, and it's a thing that you need to work on and be focused on. I think our conversation was that because timing of opening can be so ambiguous due to a lot of different factors, you don't want to lose a lot of your upfront press, sometimes 6 months before you open, because you just don't know when you're going to open. And so we've tried to hold everything as close to the vest as possible for as long as possible. And now, and now we're hiring.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be a total secret once we're hiring. So
that was the second thing that came up was culinary agents listings.
Yeah.
Shout out to Alice Chang. All right, well, I want to hear about the food and the concept and everything. We're going to cook a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us what we're going to make first.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to cook a really simple dish today for you guys. It's going to be akin to something we're going to be opening the menu with. It's going to be asparagus, which is bang in season right now, obviously, as we're spring opening. A lot of focus for the food at the restaurant is going to be very super seasonal and as local as possible. So this dish is a really straightforward preparation. We're going to poach the asparagus very slowly in salted butter for a long time. We're not going to boil it in the butter. We're not going to fry it in the butter. It's just going to be very tender. And then we're going to wrap it in lardo, heat it up a little bit more under the grill, and then we're going to make a sauce, which is basically like a carbonara sauce, a Roman pasta sauce, and we're going to garnish the asparagus with the carbonara sauce.
I like my vegetables covered in fat.
Yeah.
So tell us about where did the name come from and where is the space?
So the space is located on the corner of Bleecker Street and 7th Avenue. So we're right in the center of the West Village, which is awesome. The name, the Noortwyck, actually comes from a naming exercise that we did with another one of our partners, Bridget Zhu. We looked into the history of the West Village. We looked into New York restaurants, which a lot of our design language, we're looking back to tradition to keep the restaurant relevant. We didn't want to create a restaurant where it was hyper conceptualized or it was very fixed on what's cool today, because those places just go out of fashion in like 2-3 years. So as we were looking back, we came across this anecdote about when the Dutch first settled Manhattan in 1623, 1624. As everybody knows, they settled on the southernmost tip of the island, which is Friday. And then as the settlement grew, they designated an area of that settlement specifically for trading livestock, growing crops. It was where the settlement's sustenance would come from. And it was the northwesternmost point of their settlement. So the Dutch for Northwest or North Village is Noortwyck. So that was colloquially known as the Noortwyck. That's where they would go to get their food. And that area of that Dutch settlement today is exactly where the restaurant stands in the West Village. So it kind of ties in. Yeah.
And the idea is that it's a neighborhood restaurant.
Yeah.
Cute.
Is there any Dutch influence to the restaurant and menu?
I think the name is where it starts and ends.
just the name.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so how long have you been working on the project?
Andy, longer than I have. I think we kind of came together beginning of August of 2021 and decided to do something together then. And then everything, for better or for worse, went really fast. We sort of agreed to
Yes,
partner up and
less than a
and
year.
do, oh yeah.
This is fast.
And there were times where, it's like very like herky jerky and
Yeah.
things would be like, in a week, things would advance like a ton. And then nothing would happen for like 3 weeks. And then a week later, like a lot would get done. And I feel like we're still in that place now with construction and, hiring and like all those things. It's still like that. Like some days I wake up and I'm like, man, we didn't do anything last week. And then at the end of the next week, I'm like, oh my God, we just like,
we're done.
Let me tell you, 9 years into our business, I still feel like that sometimes. I'm like, holy shit, this week kicked my ass. And I'm like, I feel like I didn't get anything done. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit, Andy. We talked before we went live about the early stages of like working, trying to get something off the ground. Feeling like it wasn't going to happen. Because I think it's a common sentiment for a lot of people that they have an idea, want to do something, and doesn't always.
Yeah, I had an idea that I wanted to do something. Actually, it was actually Cedric. Obviously, we worked together at Madison Park for a number of years. I had a lot to do with the pop-up restaurants that Madison Park did in the Hamptons and Aspen. And it was actually when we were in Aspen, Cedric introduced me to someone who is now like probably almost one of our most prominent investors, and he wanted me to be his private chef originally. And then I cooked for him a couple of times, and in that meantime, he found a private chef. But he said, "Hey, look, you should open a restaurant. We should open a restaurant together. I'd love to invest in you to open a restaurant." And this would have been 2019, right at the start of 2019. And so, I had this very successful businessman who's also involved in other restaurants that have done very well, telling me, "Hey, I'm going to invest in you." I'd never experienced anything like that before. I was like, "Wow, this is incredible." So that kind of gave me the confidence to believe that I could do something. Leaving 11 Madison Park and then trying to actually do something, realized that I had no clue what I was actually doing or even what I wanted to do. And so it really started from like nothing and going through the process of like being totally overwhelmed with everything that you could possibly be going through. And almost luckily, it didn't really get anywhere because then obviously the pandemic hit. But,
basically, you had like one guy who's like, "I'll give you some money."
Yeah.
When you get there, you're like, "Cool,
Exactly,
quit my
right.
job."
I think that's the hard part is, you work in restaurants for a long time, chef or in the dining room, and you never really see what it's like to open your first restaurant, because no matter what it is, even if you go on to open a second project, there's invariably someone there that's done it before. That's sort of like things just get checked off, because once you've done it once, you sort of just know. And there's not really that many resources of people who are there to like help people like us kind of like get our footing, and the resources that are there often are cost prohibitive.
Yeah, that's why we started the show.
Yeah.
But it's part of it.
Because unless you're in a restaurant that's 3 people deep, you're not going to be exposed to all those things.
Yeah,
There's always going
exactly.
to be an accountant or
Right.
somebody that's taking, unless you really force yourself into that situation to say, "Show me what you're doing."
Totally. And there's been times where we've just been blindsided by like costs of things that we just like totally weren't ready for. Not even ready for it. We just didn't know they existed.
What have you learned that no one has told you that you wish you knew as first-time restaurateurs?
Well, a lot of things we kind of like, we flew by the seat of our pants a little bit. We've got obviously a lot of friends and contacts in the industry. And so we reached out to, I think first Hannah Bowers, who had done a lot of work with Delicious Hospitality, and we're like, "Hey, can you put together a P&L and like give us an idea of what an opening budget should look like and that kind of thing?" And so she gave us one, and so we just trusted it, and we took that, and we're like, "Okay, that's great, but that doesn't necessarily relate to what exactly we were doing." So, I mean, there was a ton of things. Luckily, we gave ourselves enough breathing room with the budget, we think. But like IT, we didn't have anything in the budget for IT. Which had to be totally redone in the whole space. That was $14,000.
Computer, you got to buy a computer. And to be fair, since you named her, I think Hannah did an amazing job.
She did, yeah. She crushed it.
We still use that budget, and we're still like on it. And I think that is one of the biggest advices that I would give to anyone opening a restaurant or opening any business. Figure out how to like get, even if it's not accurate for real life, a budget that's written out that gives you, what you can spend, how you like the whole thing, what you need to raise, like all of it. Her giving us that starting point was really crucial, just to figure out what we needed to raise.
You mentioned that you had the initial investor that believed in you. Are there other people that how'd you find the rest of your
Yeah. I mean, it was a total trip. I mean, the first thing I'll say about that, which was the thing that I think will stick with me, and being in a room and pitching to CEOs and leaders of industry and, you know, Fortune 500 people, all these kind of guys, you very quickly realize that you're sitting in front of someone that's done this their entire lives.
Yeah.
And
Knows much better than you do.
knows much better than you do about it.
They know the questions to
you know,
ask. And
we did not go to business school, and I've never done this before, and now I'm sitting in front of the CEO of this giant company. And
How many pitches did it take you to get?
I think I pitched to probably 50 people.
Wow. And how many
50.
investors did you end up with on your cap table?
Now we have 18, which is
I mean, that's a lot. That's a high percentage of yeses, to be honest.
it's not bad.
I think one of the hardest parts is you need to get a couple people on board to sell other people. Whether you tell the other investors their names or not, like there was a couple investors that were like, this person's in, we're in. They are both making a business decision. Like I think if you show no returns or, you know, questionable business practices or whatever, they're going to say no, but they're also investing in us personally. And so we had personal relationships with a lot of our investors, some much more than others. And they're choosing to invest in you as a person. And so I think our history and the way we've interacted with these people is really important. And I think Andy and I have conducted ourselves very professionally our whole careers. And so all these relationships that we built over our careers came in, and, you know, like the way you, and I don't want to say the way you dress, but the way you carry yourself anywhere you go, and you never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to talk to, and how that relationship comes back around, you know, 6 years later, you know, 3 months later is really important. If you ever think you're going to own a restaurant, as a dining room person or as a chef, I think, you know, you should always think about that no matter where you go, because we're travels.
Andy now has about a pound of butter.
How much butter was it?
Half a pound.
8 asparagus in there.
Yeah.
So they're going to taste amazing. But tell us about what you're doing.
So we're just basically almost confeeding this asparagus very, very slowly.
On
in
very
solid
low.
butter.
Yeah.
And this is straight butter?
So this is straight butter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you have something else in the other pan.
Pasta water, actually.
Oh, pasta water.
Yeah. So the sauce for this asparagus is going to be a carbonara sauce.
It comes up a lot on this show. So I'm curious, you know, I know we talked a little bit before when you were starting about how did you, because it's great when you get in the room with those people, but how do you get in the room with those people? Tell us a little bit about how like the fundraising has evolved over time for you guys.
Similar to what Cedric touched on a second ago with, you know, putting yourself across the best you can if you're ever in a room with those kind of people. I started doing the private chef thing as a result of leaving my last job and then needing some income. But then even more so because of the pandemic and there was no restaurants to work in. But it also put me in front of a lot of people. And, you know, if you do a good job, which I try to make sure I did every time, then, you know, you're in the good graces of those kind of people. So a lot of those kind of guys would say, what are you doing? And this and that. And I told them I was trying to open a restaurant. And a few of them would say, oh, let me know. Here's a business card. And I'd love to get involved. And it kind of came from there, really.
Were you part
You
of
guys
that
were
this
already
time?
involved at this point.
Not yet.
Not
So-
yet.
Not yet, yeah.
So this is in summer of 2021.
Part of the founder story is through our friend Bridget. Andy was looking for some firepower for his pitch deck at that time, and we had a conversation, and he was like, "Can I put you as a beverage person?" And at the time, I already knew I was going to go back to Madison Park to help reopen post-pandemic, and so I was like, "Of course, you can definitely use me. Just make sure it's very clear that I'm a consultant and that I won't be working at the restaurant, because you know, you never know whose eyes are going to land on a pitch deck." I've seen pitch decks in my life that were definitely not meant for me.
Right.
So I know that once you hit send on that email and the deck is
It's out
included,
there in the world.
you don't know where it's
Yeah.
going to end up. So when I went back to reopen EMP and make it nice in general, the thought was very much, this is going to be like my forever job. I went back as the director of operations, not the wine director anymore. And I was very much like, if this works, I'm going to be here for really the same amount of time that I was there prior. So, you know, another decade or whatever it would have been, or it's going to be very short lived, and I'm going to have to figure out what to do with my life pretty quickly. Clearly, since we're in this room right now with Andy cooking,
It was the ladder.
It was the ladder.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to Andy, like I said, beginning of August. If you're looking for a partner, you know, I'm in for that. he was willing to take me on, it was a no-brainer for sure.
And so you said yes. It's like a dating story.
Yeah,
I love
totally,
it.
yeah.
It's like, will you
He
have
always
me?
wanted to be with me, really.
Yeah, it was meant to be.
And by that point, I think I probably toured 35 spaces that were possible.
Were you looking everywhere? Were you looking for?
I was
certain
focused on the West
space?
Village. Everybody wants to eat in the West Village. Everybody, whether you're going on a date night or your parents are in town or whatever you are, like people want to be in the West Village. So
tell us a little bit about the space that you have and what you've had to do. And I've heard there's 38 burners and no plancha.
When you're starting out, funds are, you want to be really careful with the money you have. And so having a place where you have to turn the gas off presents a variable.
You mean turning it off to like change out?
And then
Change out,
Con Ed has to come put it back on.
Right.
And it, it's very much like a liquor license. You get on the schedule and
Could be 6 months.
they come turn it on when they're ready,
Right.
not when you're ready.
Right.
Did you guys have somebody that was helping you through this process, or was this all?
yeah,
you guys?
it's actually one of the things that kind of really made a big difference when Cedric came on board is when Cedric introduced the restaurant to Keith Durst. And
Oh yeah.
we met with Todd, his real estate guy, and we met him at a coffee shop on Bleecker Street called Rocco's Pasticceria. And as we were telling him, like, this is what we're looking for, and he's like, no, I'm going to take you guys up to Hudson Yards, you're going to check out the space. And as we were walking up Bleecker towards the 1 train, we passed by the Loyal, and he said, oh, by the way, this place is going to go out of business. Like, we don't think it's for you guys, but just so you know. And we were like, hang on a minute.
You're like, why is it not for us?
Yeah.
What are you trying to say?
This is kind of perfect. It's on the corner.
What was
it's
his
very
answer to
location.
why it was not for you?
I don't know if you ever got an
didn't
answer
get
for
that.
that.
Wrong side of Bleecker, wrong side of 7th Avenue.
So he didn't think it was a good.
I have a theory, which hopefully proves to be correct. It's easy to say that at this point, that in New York City, in Manhattan specifically, location isn't that important. I think accessibility is important.
Accessibility.
If you think about it, what makes a block well known or location, desirable is the business that housed it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, taken with a bit of humility, obviously, but the idea is that you're going to do something that might maybe change the block, right? And make it a destination spot.
Tell us what's happening now.
All right, so the asparagus is nicely cooked, and this is lardo di colonnata. So it's the cured back fat from the pig. It's cured with rosemary, black pepper, and salt, and then it's left to dry for a period of time.
It's beautifully white.
It's beautifully white. It's absolutely delicious. We're wrapping the asparagus in a lardo. We're going to flash this in the oven, and then we're going to make our sauce.
Proving that not all vegetables need to be vegetarian.
There you go. I would say that this is a high-fat veggie.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about, so you got the space, and what did you have to do to it?
But I think that's the other thing which made it so attractive, is because compared to all of these spaces that we saw that needed gut renovations, or they needed everything, or we needed to build a kitchen or whatever, this was the first space that we truly saw that was turnkey.
Mm-hmm.
If we wanted to, we could have been open, like, pending the liquor license. Everything was there for us to open. So we saw it and we're like, okay, the kitchen's here, like, we've got this full basement, the bar is built, we've got 3 walk-in refrigerators, like, we're probably not going to see another place that's as ideal as this. And then as we got into the details of it, it actually made sense. We could afford it. It made sense with our budget. So that's when we decided to pull the trigger on it. Obviously, we needed to change it. It couldn't be the same restaurant.
They had like
You
all
did
the
not buy the
wallpaper,
business,
right?
you
Wasn't the one?
So it's not wallpaper, as we
It's
found
not.
out.
It's paintings.
It's hand drawings.
It's hand drawings on the wall.
Yeah.
Right. It was like sort of famous for these like food and like naked people
Yes.
with like food.
Explicit carrots.
Explicit carrots.
Is that
Yes.
still there?
There are 2 or 3 images that are still there today. TBD, maybe it'll be like an Easter egg hunt.
They'll be there.
They'll still be there when we open.
I have a chef question for Andy. You've been in private kitchens,
Mm-hmm.
which I did for a time as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a much slower pace. Are you ready to go back to?
Yeah, I mean, it's taking me a while.
Fair
to
experience.
I was gonna say, do you want to ask
It's a lot
him
of
with you?
experience. It's a lot of work,
experience,
yeah.
you know?
But it's just making me think that now you go back to this like super fast paced.
Yeah, no, you're totally right.
Are you ready? Are you
It's-
nervous?
It is very, very different. I'm really, really excited to get back into it. I had a great time cooking privately. I was very lucky with the experiences that I had and the people I met. But it's just not the same as, the buzz that you get in the kitchen and the camaraderie with the other guys on the line and leading the team and creating food that you want to cook. And that's one of the biggest things, that you have to kind of realize quickly, especially if you're cooking privately, is you're not cooking for yourself. When you cook privately, you're cooking for whoever is paying you, you know. Whereas when you're in a restaurant, you know, you're cooking the food that you believe in and the food that you want to cook more so.
What about you? You ready to work a service again?
Yeah, I've always really enjoyed working service. I love the interactions with guests, and to Annie's point, that the team is everything, right? I think, you know, I had a really strong, amazingly strong wine team that I worked with at EMP that I loved, and you know, what we were saying about, you know, always being professional and you never know who's going to be an investor. I think it's really important to always be your best professional self, because even if it's not in an ownership place, I think that idea of you should always create a network for yourself of people that you want to work with and that want to work with you. Like
Right.
you can go someplace, you get hired as a manager, and then you can hire 2-3 people to come with you at different levels of experience. That's a sign. That's actually the clearest sign that you're a good manager. So yeah, we're ready to pull from our network and see who wants to come join our adventure. And you can label that as whatever you want to label
I like it.
Finally, the asparagus is all wrapped in lardo. Really typical, like classic carbonara sauce. Very, very simple, like all Roman pastas. So the sauce is just whole eggs. It's whisked with some pecorino romano, the cracked black pepper. There's a little bit of pasta cooking water. And then the real skill here is making sure you don't scramble the eggs. So it's cooked very, very lightly. We try to do everything with the food as local as possible. There's some things that you can't get local, like these black peppercorns.
Shout out to Burlap and Barrel.
Shout out to Burlap and Barrel. These are Vietnamese peppercorns. These guys are based out of Queens in New York, and they're very responsible to the farmers, and their product's absolutely amazing. So very proud to be using their stuff.
While he's finishing the dish up, should we do our quick fire
Yeah,
questions?
these are our questions we like to ask everybody. We're still working on the menu, right? So we don't have a full.
We have a working menu.
You have a working
Yeah,
menu?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this is a hard one because I would imagine that you probably like everything on the new menu. When I ask you what your favorite item is on Andy's menu.
So everything is more conceptual right now. I think the ethos of the restaurant is for like people coming together and having like a really fun dinner that's casual. And so we're gonna have some dishes to share. And I think seeing whether it's a whole fish or large format fish or roast chicken for 2, I think those are things I'm most excited about.
What wine are you most excited about?
I'm excited about all wines. I'm excited. I'm excited to run a little bit smaller list. The list that I was in charge of at 11 Madison is an encyclopedic version of a wine list, especially of sort of the classic old world and American wines. I'm excited to like sort of take that sort of same focus, but really dial it down. And I'm excited to see what people will drink at our restaurant. You know, always be excited about selling some Burgundy or some like really old Napa Cab. But I'm excited for that view to change depending on what people are ordering and drinking. And
What about you, Chef? What are you most excited to cook?
Well, you know, I think I mentioned earlier, we touched on the fact that we have an abnormal amount of space for the size of the restaurant we have. We have an extra abnormal amount of walk-in space, which is kind of crazy.
I've never heard a chef in New York
I know,
complain
yeah,
about
yeah.
having too much walk-in
I'm
space.
definitely not complaining.
Complainer state, yeah.
So we want to do a lot of dry aging in-house. We want to have a good bread program. We want to have a fermentation program because we have the space to be able to do it. So I'm really excited about that kind of stuff. You know, in touching on the seasonality and the produce local to New York, although we're not quite matching the West Coast and a lot of the stuff, that's mostly because of the barren months in New York, you know, December and January, where there's not that much stuff at the farmer's market. So being able to take a lot of the produce that you can get, you know, in the prime months, spring and summer, and then figuring out ways to preserve it, pickle it, ferment it, whatever it is. Not to make that a big thing about what we do with food at the restaurant, but just being able to use those little touches to kind of heighten dishes in one way or another. Super excited for that.
Give me an idea of how you feel as a customer walking in. Obviously, your EMP heritage, you walk in a suit and tie, and it's a very formal, you know, thing that you probably booked 6 months ago, and you know, it's a very expensive meal for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the customer? How are they coming in? What are they gonna?
the hope for our restaurant is that people will feel like we're part of their life, and they'll like I said, like go for comfort on a Tuesday night, but also celebrate big occasions and have our restaurant, our staff be a part of that. So
Where are you going right now?
I was
What makes you
just
feel that way?
Yeah.
we're,
What's
you
your
know,
favorite restaurant?
Very nice.
it's embarrassing that I don't eat out as much as I should. I hate to plug a restaurant that doesn't need a plug, but you know, I go to Stella more often than I should probably admit. Sit at the bar.
Maybe do you have one?
And there's some cool places popping up now because, you know, all those places that went out of business, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. And there's little things popping up here and there, which are really nice. Game, which is just like not far from us on Google Street. Actually, a good friend of mine who's running that place, Ed, I think he's doing a great job. Yeah, I think it's interesting to see what's going to happen, especially in the next 6 months to a year with, you know, people like us who are kind of taking a chance with things that they can do. I think New York City is one of the best places for that.
What advice do you have for first-time restaurateurs after going through this experience?
I mean, I don't know if we're in a position yet to give anyone some advice. We should do this again in a year and see, you know, both what's changed in our opinions. The advice that I will give is that people should work. If this is what we're doing now, is even an inkling in your plan as a restaurant employee, work someplace where you can meet people like Andy that will both inspire you while you're working together and you can learn from, but then also 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 years down the line, when you're really looking to do something on your own, you can pull for that network. If you don't work in places where you meet people like that, then you're going to be out there on your own doing it. And I can't imagine having gone through this process without a partner helping along and having the knowledge that whatever's going to come out of that kitchen is going to be amazing and not have to worry about that as a thing. So
I always am in awe of like solo founders and entrepreneurs, and like I don't know how you can do it alone.
Yeah, I think it's always going to take longer than you think.
Yeah.
It's going to take more money than you think.
Yep.
And take all the help that you can get.
Yep. All right, so we're plating asparagus.
We're going to finish it with this carbonara sauce. And so it's basically, you know, it's asparagus, ham, and eggs,
Yep.
and cheese.
Sounds delicious.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Tell us how we find. I know that there's nothing on your Instagram account.
You
I'm
guys are
trying
so
to find
under the
information
radar.
about you guys.
When's
But
the
at least
opening?
give us the name,
Yeah,
so
name
that when you are posting, that they'll be able to know.
Yeah, so look out for us. It's going to be called the Noortwyck. It's going to be at 289 Bleecker Street. It's on the corner of 7th Avenue South, 7th Avenue South and Bleecker.
Loud in Brooklyn today.
Fingers crossed, touch wood, we're opening third week of May, so late spring. And we can't wait to welcome everybody to it.
We're
Cool.
excited.
We're excited to be there as well. We're excited to try this
We're gonna eat
asparagus.
some asparagus now.
For us, you can obviously find us at Tilit NYC, at We Are Opening Soon. If you're watching, then you already know that we're on YouTube now. If you're listening, you already know that we're on Heritage Radio. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So
Thanks for having
much.
us. Thank you.
you.